At Team Toyota, they've been selling and servicing new and used Toyotas in your community for over 50 years. And you can reserve your next new Toyota with them today. You'll get a realistic timeline, and even in this crazy market, they won't charge you over MSRP. Or don't wait at all. With over 75 certified Toyotas, including a bunch of RAV4 and Highlanders, you can drive one home today. And you can always trust them to maintain your current vehicle. Their service and collision centers are high-tech, comfortable, and will save you time and money. Team Toyota can help you go anywhere you want, but they'll always be your hometown team. Just visit teamtoyota.net and choose from 3 locations in Langhorne, Glen Mills, or Princeton. Hey folks, welcome to the Phillies Talk podcast presented by Team Toyota. Corey Seidman and Ricky Bottalico here with you on a Tuesday as the Phils go into the second leg of this 6-game homestand, taking on the Seattle Mariners for the next 3. But Ricky, the Phils are pretty hot right now. Won 6 out of 8, just took 3 of 4 from a Rockies team that beat them in the first game and got out to an early lead in game 2. But the Phils were able to come back, win a couple tight ones. And then over the weekend, particularly Saturday and Sunday, they used the long ball, which we hadn't seen. We hadn't seen much homering out of this Phillies lineup the first 2-3 weeks, but finally the power came.
It did come. This is a good thing. People will say, well, the wind was blowing out. Wind blows out a lot of ballparks. I just think they weren't trying. Sometimes you go up there and try to hit home runs and things backfire on you. You don't get a good pitch to hit. You end up topping a baseball. They didn't miss many barrels. And that to me is something that you need to see from this Phillies team. A team that really kind of lives and dies by a 3-run homer. If you really look at their team, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for somebody to get on, and then boom, 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 all of a sudden they're up 3-0. Those are the type of games you want to see from the Phillies. But I mean, everybody's kind of jumping in. We saw Pache hit one out of the yard the other day. You saw Cody Clemens go deep. So it's not just the main setters, I guess you would say, the guys that set the game up. It's kind of everybody in the lineup right now is really going at it. And one guy in particular is Brandon Marsh. I mean, wow. Where did this come from? You could have told me that he's going to come up and he's going to change his ways from where he was with the Angels. Okay. We'll see how that goes. But I have to give credit to Kevin Long. It seems like every guy that Kevin Long gets in touch with becomes a much better hitter. And Brandon Marsh is, he's to me, he's a mainstay now in center field. I don't care if you throw a lefty, righty. I would play him every single day. He's become an everyday player. He's looking like he doesn't have any issues going up against the left-handers. So to me, he's one of those guys that really stands out. I think his OBP at date is 455. That is ridiculous. And he's a turnover to the lineup type guy at the bottom of the lineup. It's exactly what you need to get the lineup back to Stott and Turner. You're going to score a lot more runs that way. And that's why I think it's very important for these guys with the Jake Cave, with the Clemens when he plays, and even Edmundo Sosa. When these guys are getting hot, it's only turning over the lineup to the guys that have been there and done that. And we're starting to see that with the Phillies. And this is something that's welcome because let's face it, the inconsistency offensively until this past weekend, it was really starting to shine more than anything else the Phillies were doing. Yes, they were getting their hits, but they weren't getting those big hits that counted. Now, all of a sudden, those hits are starting to come into play, especially not necessarily in this series. I know you have the Mariners, and you can't overlook that. I could overlook it, and I could say, well, you're going into Houston, you're going into L.A. You need these guys, at high levels going into those places.
Well, the next 2 pitchers they're going to face in this Mariners series, Logan Gilbert and George Kirby, 2 really good young right-handers who have deep mixes of pitches, and Gilbert in particular, really nasty off-speed stuff. So it's going to be a different sort of challenge for the Phillies the next 9 games against the Mariners, Astros, and Dodgers than it was against the Rockies and Reds. I mean, just looking at these next 3 series, you'll get Gilbert and Kirby against the Mariners. You'll get Framber Valdez and Christian Javier in Houston. You'll get Julio Urias and Dustin May in Los Angeles. Ooh. So a lot of top-notch starting pitching coming the Phillies' way. But, to your point about Brandon Marsh, it's not just this season. It's been since he got here last year. hitting .313 in 62 games as a Philly with a ton of extra base hits, 28 extra base hits in 215 plate appearances. Kevin Long did spread him out and unlocked this next level, but credit to Brandon Marsh for going out and doing it on a daily basis. And he's been dynamic against left-handed pitching. He's hitting .316 against lefties. All six of his hits against lefties are extra base hits, 4 doubles and 2 homers. This is a guy who made it his priority in 2023 to succeed against lefties. We saw Christian Pache start some games early in center field against left-handed pitching. You'll probably still see that throughout the season, a right-handed center fielder against a tough lefty. But Brandon Marsh, slowly but surely, is making himself that everyday player. He's not going to hit .350 with this 1,000-plus OPS for the season probably, but he's lengthened the Phillies lineup. And when you have Stott at the top and Brandon Marsh at the bottom, who seem to have taken the next step in their, just the natural next step in their careers in their mid-20s, it lengthens the Phillies lineup so much to the point that when Bryce Harper returns, you might see Brandon Marsh hitting 8th.
You know what? You brought up Harper returning, which could be as early as May 1st. I mean, as far as we're seeing and what we're hearing. I mean, when you really look at it, I almost feel bad for Rob Thompson. What is he going to do in that type of situation? You already have Stott, Turner, Schwarber, and then, I mean, you have a lot of mix that you could do 4, 5, 6 right now. But when you add him into the lineup, that lengthens your lineup down to 7, 8 guys with Marsh. I mean, that is impressive. That's and as a matter of fact, you can look around the league all you want. You will not find a team that deep. The Phillies will have the deepest lineup in baseball when Harper comes back, if they don't already have it right now. I mean, when you look at it, if you're a pitcher coming in to pitch against the Phillies, especially like right now where they're swinging the bats well, you can't have a comfort zone out on the mound. You don't look and say, okay, this is a guy that I could relax to. There is none of that against the Phillies. That's what's going to make them so good in the long run, that if a guy goes down or a guy's off and these other players that are bench players are taking the bull by the horns and doing what they're supposed to do, it's going to make their lineup so much better every single day. I mean, this is a team that's capable of throwing up 7 runs every night. I mean, I think what we saw at the beginning was a bunch of guys that weren't necessarily 100% prepared out of spring training. And you could say what you want, but there was a lot of time off for a lot of guys because they went to the WBC. Yes, you're getting game at bats and it's high intensity adrenaline at bats, but when you come back to your team, you need to gel back into that lineup. I don't think the Phillies had that much time to do that. We all know Schwarber's a slow starter. He still has 5 home runs right now, so he's getting the job done. Turner started off a little slow. Well, I wouldn't say slow. His power numbers were slow. Those are starting to kick into gear now. I just think everything that's happening with this team right now is getting better and better and better. I just find it very interesting. I want to see what he does with Harper when he comes back in the lineup. Is Harper going to hit cleanup? Is he going to hit third? Is he going to hit second? Where does everybody else move? Is Schwarber going to get moved back to 4 or 5?
Well, so
there's so many different things that can happen.
I was thinking that Harper, you could go left, right, left all the way down the order. If you still led Stott off, you could go Stott 1, Turner 2, Harper 3. Then you'd have to figure out, is that Castellanos or Real Muto in the 4 spot? It would mean Schwarber would move down to 5, which is as low as he's hit in a very long time since joining this team, probably getting back to the beginning portion of last season, maybe. But that's the other part of it, is that it enables you to go left, right, left all the way down. If Harper can play some first base eventually, that wouldn't be where he's playing when he first returns. That gives you even more flexibility. Offensively, early here in the early going, the Tampa Bay Rays and the Chicago Cubs have had the top 2 offenses in baseball in terms of, all the rate stats, but also converting those into run scoring hits. Whereas the Phillies, to your point, hadn't been hitting many home runs. They had just 19 in their first 21 games before hitting the 7 on Saturday and Sunday. And they had also struggled situationally. It was like they would score 7 runs one night and then get shut out the next. You're asking Rob Thompson, you're asking the players, like, why is there such a fluctuation in offense? And you're hearing most of the standard answers about it being an up and down game and guys getting used to, new roles and new spots. I wanted to ask you about a couple other guys in new roles and new spots who seem to have settled in. And that's Gregory Soto and Craig Kimbrell.
Yeah.
Those 4 guys at the back end of the bullpen right now are pitching the way the Phillies thought they would be pitching. All of them lights out. Alvarado, we saw how dominant he was last year, but he's reached a level now where, like, he legitimately might be the best reliever in all of baseball.
I think he is.
Yeah, like I was talking to somebody the other day. I said, this is better than peak Aroldis Chapman, because peak Aroldis Chapman had control issues. Jose Alvarado still hasn't walked anybody. He's not falling behind in counts, and that used to define this guy's career. Now it's just like assumed that it's going to be a 1-2 count every time.
And the same thing's happening with Soto now. I mean, when you really think about it, in his first couple starts, he was a little bit all over the place, and now he has really settled into basically a sixth inning role. And he's a guy that could close out games also. And when you have four guys that can close out games, that shortens what you need to do with your starting pitchers. I mean, obviously, you don't want to go every night where you have to throw these guys in the sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth innings. I think as long as your starting pitching continues to grow, you're going to have more rest for these guys, and they're just going to be better as time goes on. You brought up Alvarado. I mean, I want you to picture yourself stepping in a box against him, knowing that he throws 100 miles an hour with life, which means it's got some jump on it at the end, and he's spotting the baseball on the corners. You're in big trouble, because then he mixes in a slider / cutter, whatever you want to call it, that you're not picking up a dot on. You're picking up seams, and it looks like a fastball. All of a sudden it's by you, and with movement. This guy, I'm telling you right now, he is the best reliever in baseball. I don't even think there's anybody that I would put up there with him right now. If you asked me who's one guy I need to go into a ball game, and even with runners on base, who is that one guy in Major League Baseball that you would want in there? It would be him. He strikes out everybody, and there's no panic. He had one game where he gave up a run. Big deal. That happens to everybody. But I mean, when you look at his repertoire and what he's doing right now and where he's spotting the baseball, unbelievable. And you move on to Sir Anthony. Did not look good in a couple outings. He's now gotten back to 98 miles an hour, hitting his spots with movement. So those two guys you don't even worry about. The guy that I thought we were going to have to worry about would have been Craig Kimbrell. And I think at times you see it. He overthrows the baseball. I think somebody must have gotten in his ear and said, you don't have to overthrow the baseball. You hit your spots. Because if you ever watch the way he throws, the plane of the baseball stays there, which means he has ride on his fastball, which means it's getting there with good momentum. And to me, that's the biggest key. And him overthrowing the baseball is where he gets in trouble. You'll see him pull a ball into the left-handed batter's box every now and again. And that's a fastball. He'll do that too, which means he doesn't feel comfortable with where his pitch is on that day. But I think they've gotten him to a point where you don't have to throw 100 miles an hour every time out there. You throw a 95, has good ride on it, and you could live with that. And he's gotten to a really nice point too. A lot of credit to the whole coaching staff of the Phillies right now, because that's who a lot of these guys rely on to see where they are in certain situations. And I think they've gotten the ears of those relievers, and they all know what their jobs are right now. That's another benefit that has kind of come into play. And it just seems as though they're very relaxed when they're going out there now. It could be a 1-run game, a 4-run game. It doesn't matter. These guys are just going out there throwing their pitches, and they all look pretty good right now.
Yeah, Craig Kimbrell's last 6 appearances, 5 2/3 scoreless innings with just 4 base runners and 9 strikeouts.
Yeah.
He's only 4 saves away from 400 for his career, and we're seeing the Phillies go back and forth they used Jose Alvarado 3 times in a row in the 9th inning and save opportunities last week. That was more so matchup based, and then they used Kimbrell this past the most recent save situation against a more right-handed portion of the lineup. So they clearly feel like they have multiple options. And the other part of that is that when Ranger Suarez returns, which also looks like it's going to be happening here in a few weeks, maybe 2 weeks or so, maybe less, that could end up shifting Matt Strahm to the bullpen role that he was initially signed to fill. Signed to a 2-year, $15 million contract to be a multi-inning reliever, a left-handed guy who can get outs from both sides. But we've seen such swing and miss stuff out of Matt Strahm in the starting role that just thinking about how that could play over 5 outs, for example, in the 6th and 7th inning of games, that's another thing that you would think is going to rest those core relievers at the back end of games, because maybe instead of having to bring in Gregory Soto to pitch the 6th inning, you can have Strahm be the bridge between the starter and the back end on some nights.
Yeah, Strahm to me is one of those guys who has no fear. He wants to compete. And when you have that in your heart and in your mind, I think that just makes you a better pitcher, because all we see from him in his starting role is attacking hitters, attacking the zone. And the one pitch that I've noticed that's very beneficial to him is the chest high fastball. I mean, he gets a 1-1-2 count, 0-2 count. He goes up there. I really believe the hitters are seeing that pitch as a middle pitch, and all of a sudden it doesn't come down and it stays on that same plane. Not a lot of guys could do that. It's not, I think people think, well, that's an easy pitch to throw. It's just up in the zone. It's not that easy to throw it up there because you're so your mindset is so I want to get on top of the baseball and throw it down. And then all of a sudden he comes in and that pitch is by you before you could even recognize it. So I think he's benefited a lot with that. He's benefited a lot from throwing strikes. I think the one game he struggled with, he was kind of a lot of big counts, which you don't like to see from a starter. I believe he threw 67 pitches in an inning and 2/3. Is that correct? Or close to that? But you want to see him pounding the zone. And I think obviously when you go to the bullpen, that's going to be what's on his mind. Go out there and pound the zone.
So, Ricky, we got a bunch of questions on Twitter. We've actually kind of already gotten to a few of these topics, people wondering how Bryce Harper is going to end up adjusting the Phillies lineup, like who's going to move into what spots. But we also got a handful of questions asking about Christian Pache, what we've thought of his recent swings. Does it seem like he's turned a corner? I'll say that when you and I sat down to do the last podcast, I think you asked me, what are the chances he makes it to May 1st? And I said it was like 50-50. But since then, he's solidified himself. He's been putting the bat on the ball, laid down a couple timely bunts, obviously plays the good defense. And on Saturday, when they hit all those home runs, his was the hardest hit of the day.
Yeah, it's also accepting your role. You know, I think he's one of those guys that in his mind believes he should be a starter. And when that happens, you don't get mentally prepared to do your job in certain situations. And I'm going to say this: playing once or twice a week is not the easiest thing in the world. I think people just think, well, these guys are Major League Baseball players, whether they're on the bench or whatnot, they should be able to just jump into a game and be comfortable about it. No, it's a certain role that you're playing and certain things that you have to do away from the field. So when he's not playing, he's got to be in that tunnel. I mean, for most of the game, taking batting practice, make sure you're on point, make sure you're seeing pitches well. And the bottom line is, no matter what hitter you talk to in the major leagues, it's all about seeing the ball out of the hand. And I just think he's seeing the baseball a lot better. And the swings he's starting to put on pitches, and he's not missing his own barrel, which is a positive. But I don't think he did hit the home run, but I mean, I don't think that's his goal. I think his goal is to barrel the baseball and go gap to gap. If they go out of the ballpark, then so be it. Defensively, I still think he has stuff to work on. I know people say, well, he's here because he's defensive and this and that. I know it was windy the other day at the ballpark, but he did a couple circles on a couple balls out in left field. So that's a little concerning. And I know people will say, well, left field's easy to play. No, left field, you get a lot of balls hit right at you, a lot of balls that dive on you, that knuckle under on you. And he's more or less of a quote unquote center fielder. And in center field, you're just working off the movement. You see the pitch, you follow the baseball. That's what you do in center field. And it's a little tougher on the corners. You got to make sure you see what type of swing the guy took. And that's why you see him do those little pirouettes out there. But that'll get better in time, knowing the position better as time goes on.
This question comes from Jeremy Banks on Twitter at JPB08. Who among the regulars are you the most concerned about a few weeks into the season now? JT has never been a high on base percentage guy, but he currently has just 3 walks and 24 strikeouts, and his peripherals aren't looking great early on. I would have said 2 days ago, despite JT's slow start, I think I would have said Nick Castellanos just because the power still hadn't come, and it was already his 3rd homerless drought of at least 90 plate appearances as a Philly. And you're thinking like, man, is this guy ever going to turn into the 20 to 25 home run power guy that he was previously? Then he hits 2 of them over the weekend. JT has come up small in a lot of big spots here early, but we've seen this from him throughout his Phillies career, that he has these cold stretches for a month where it leads some people in the city to say, like, is he really the best catcher in baseball? And then he has 3-4 week stretches where he shows you offensively, defensively, and on the base paths that he is. So I don't know who quite would be my answer, but when you have 6 regulars hitting 290 or better, there aren't many easy choices. I guess JT probably would be the guy who started the slowest.
I guess of everybody, yeah. I mean, when you really look at the lineup, JT's been swinging a lot of pitches that are just out of the strike zone up, and you can't catch up to those. And that's just a thing of seeing the baseball and making sure you're bringing it to you instead of swinging at pitchers' pitches, that he's finding himself in a lot of 0-2, 1-2 holes. And when you do that, it makes it just makes it hard to hit. He's a guy that I think would benefit from hitting a fastball early on the count right now, just to get your swing down, just to feel more, I guess, comfortable in the box. Because when you start getting in those low counts, the 0-2s, the 1-2s, I mean, then you're going to start seeing a lot of breaking balls. You're going to see a lot of balls that pitchers want you to think are in the zone and are falling out of the zone. And JT gets in these little modes where he'll just top it to shortstop, a two-hopper to short, and then he's out. But you brought up a point. Last year, I want you to think back to last year. I believe it was before that was the Toronto series last year where he took the 4 days off, right? That was last year.
Yeah.
Now, think about early last year. He struggled badly. As a matter of fact, I remember saying on a couple post-game shows, I wonder if Stubbsy's going to get some play, a little bit more play time to give JT some time off to think about what's going on with him at the plate. And it turned into, okay, well, he ends up getting days off because he couldn't go to Toronto. And then after that, if you remember, after that, he went on a torrid tear. So I think I'm putting him in the same boat as Kyle Schwarber, that things are going to get better as time goes by and it heats up a little bit. Those two guys I can't be concerned about. No matter how many times I could sit here and say, well, JT's struggling a little bit. Everybody struggles at the big league level at some point during the season. Just hopefully JT, it's not going to be for a long period of time, and hopefully he gets everything going back in the right direction. As for Castellanos, now he was hitting a lot of doubles. So to me, that shows gap to gap power, which means once they start coming middle to middle in, those home runs are going to come. He hadn't hit a home run since August 17th of last year. That's a long time for a guy making $20+ million. You expect a lot more out of him. I think that would have been fair to bring him up, but now all of a sudden it seems like his swing's on point, and you know what? It's a confidence thing for him. I don't care what anybody says. You look at him right now, you listen to him right now, and if you compared that back to last season, this is a completely different guy that's here right now. He just feels a lot more comfortable, and his confidence is growing every day. And I'm sure after those 2 home runs the other day, his confidence has gone up even more.
And if you get him on third base, he's the most dangerous man in the game, the way he's dancing off the bag and
It's a
distracting
little
the
annoying.
pitcher.
Like that would really kind of irk me. Actually, back in the day, somebody would have drilled him by now.
Can you believe, Ricky, by the way, that the batting average this season on ground balls is 1 point higher than it was last season? Like, would you have thought with the shift rules that we would see a bigger increase? I'm just thinking about that in relation to Kyle Schwarber, who you just brought up, who's pretty much doing the exact same thing this year that he did last year. Low batting average, power, not hitting many singles.
Right.
I think if the thought was that without the shift, he's going to utilize the space between first and second more, but we really haven't seen left-handed hitters do that much more often this year.
Well, Schwarber's hitting a lot of balls up in the air, which is his MO anyway. So, I mean, it really doesn't baffle you. I think he'll start hitting that hole. He's going to start hitting that hole pretty much at will at some point in June or July, and he's going to pick up a lot more extra hits than he would have had last year. But, I mean, I think from the Phillies' point of view, number one, Bohm's been good at third base and at first base, so whatever. And Edmundo Sosa is an upgrade at third base when you put him in there defensively. Turner is outstanding at shortstop, and Stott reminds me a lot of like a Mickey Morandini type defensive player, where he's probably not going to make the unbelievable plays, but he'll make a great play here and there, and he's going to make all the basic plays. So, I mean, you put that around the Phillies infield, that you're going to save a lot of hits. I know you're talking around the league, but I mean, I haven't seen every team around the league right now. I just think you're letting these guys play defense, which is what it was when they were in college, when they were in high school. That's what it was. Go out and play defense. So maybe at this point during the season, they're all fresh. They're going to get to the ball up the middle. There are still some shifts going on the same side of the field, if you look. Especially, I've noticed a lot of there's a left-handed hitter, and the shortstop will definitely be more up the middle behind the pitcher than anything else. But I mean, with everything said, I mean, these guys are playing defense, and you got to give them a lot of credit, because I could think of 4 or 5 balls that in the last week that were hit that were really good plays by either Stott or Turner. Turner up the middle, Stott to his left. That probably would have been hits maybe last year because it would have been in that hole where Stott may have been playing up the middle. So, I mean, shift could hurt, shift could help.
Yeah, the Turner Stott middle infield looks better defensively than Stott and Segura did. Trey Turner, I remember early in camp talking about how it was a goal of his to be much better defensively this season. He committed a career high 16 errors last year. I haven't seen anything in terms of like range or throwing that makes you concerned about the guy's defense. He's looked rock solid so far.
His range to his left is better than his range to his right. But when you have Turner, who could also go to his left very well, it takes away a lot of the plays he may have to make up the middle anyway. So, I mean, it only helps him in the long run having Turner over there. Whenever you get a really good shortstop, it always helps your second baseman, no matter what. So Stott's going to be better in general. As long as he makes, like I said, those routine plays. I don't care how hard the ball's hit, but if it's hit right at you, you have to make that play. You have to know what base to go to. He's like baseball-wise, I look at him as a smart individual defensively. So that's half the battle over there, knowing where to go with the baseball, knowing that shortstop's going to be there to turn two is always a benefit. And I think just having a guy like Trey Turner who is quick on his feet and could get to both sides, I think that just helps a guy like Stott.
It's a big point of the year in the sports world right now between baseball season in full swing, the NFL draft this week, the NBA playoffs, Sixers making a run, and you can catch all the sports action and more at Rivers Casino Philadelphia. Whether it's the money line or the pass line, there's something for everyone, including a great sports book. Rivers Casino Philadelphia. Philly loves a winner. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Ricky, this next question comes from Matt Orlando18 on Twitter, who says, who is the odd man out in the starting rotation once Ranger returns? Is it Matt Strahm or could it be Bailey Falter? A question like that comes because Matt Strahm has pitched so well. He has a 3 ERA. He has 27 strikeouts in 18 innings. But I would just point you to the fact that the guy pitched 45 innings last season. The Phillies are not going to have him go from 45 to 130 or something like that, So I don't think that Matt Strahm is long for the rotation as well as he's pitched. It would just be a drastic increase. You might see him make spot starts or an opener situation where he goes 3 innings maybe. But I think that once Ranger Suarez is back, they will have their rotation with Falter in the 5 spot.
Well, sooner or later, they're both going to be in the bullpen. If Andrew Painter comes along at some point this season, everybody forgot about him. That didn't take very long to forget about him. But I think Strahm's definitely going to go to the bullpen. I mean, you brought up the innings. You're not going to send a guy out there for 130 innings, then shut him down. I think Bailey Falter has been kind of groomed for this number 5 spot right now. So I think he's going to be the guy that sticks in that spot. He's been there. He's done that. You have to see what he could do too, I think, for a full year. I think if you get him in that spot for a full year, I think you're going to see either, okay, this is a guy for the future in that 5 spot, or you're going to say to yourself, okay, we either make him a bullpenner, we trade him, we do something else with him. So I think he's just that guy right now that they need to see more of. And Strahm, you already know what you're getting. And I think Strahm's just going to make that bullpen stronger. I just don't know Bailey Falter out of the bullpen anymore. I just don't I don't see it at all.
Well, as for Andrew Painter, he's about 3 weeks into a throwing program. He picked the baseball up about the second week of April, and the Phillies are going to go very slowly with him. I mean, their hope is that he's able to contribute at some point, maybe in the second half of the season, maybe by the middle of the summer. It's not like they're going to rush things with their top prospect who represents so much, promise and importance to their future. But man, like you think of the early days of camp this year, that was the top storyline. Is Andrew Painter, that start that he made against the Twins where he's hitting like 99, 100 miles per hour against big leaguers and missing bats. So you think about maybe adding that piece to the puzzle later in the season, whether it's in a starting role or a bullpen role, maybe.
Well, he's going to be in a starter role.
I just bring that up because, you see a lot of guys broken in later in the year, like in the playoffs, maybe as like a 1-inning guy who's throwing like 99, 100. But yeah, Painter obviously is going to be a starting pitcher.
I think that's the way you have to use him, especially with a little bit elbow problems. You don't want to put him in the bullpen and say, okay, you're going to be up and down, things like that. I think with an Andrew Painter, I think it's actually benefiting the Phillies right now because if he is 100% healthy, which it sounds like he is, they're just going to hold him back as long as they want to hold him back because he would have been on a pitch limit anyways, in a sense, an innings limit, and probably would have been around 130, 140. So now you're starting to get into that point. If you bring him back in June, okay, go get him, kid. because you're probably not going to hit your innings limit at that point during the season anyways. So, but I could also see the Phillies maybe going in that 6-man rotation type thing for a little while, just so he's not getting abused. And it could also help out Aaron Nola. And we saw what happened to Wheeler late in the season last year. Wheeler got tired and he had a little bit of arm issue, and he ended up getting sat down for about a month almost, right, last year.
And that's got to be on the Phillies' mind this year already too. Is the long game with those two guys, Nola and Wheeler, at the front of the rotation, who are have carried immense workloads. I feel like I say it every week here, but the last 5 years, Nola is first, Wheeler is fourth in all of Major League Baseball in innings pitched. That doesn't even include the playoff run from last year. So Nola's been up and down so far this year. We've seen pretty much standard era Nola, where like he can look dominant for stretches of games, but there's that one inning where things unravel. Wheeler, I've been impressed by the velocity. He's pretty much been like 96, 97 from the first start of the year, save for like an inning here or there where it might drop. But, that is of paramount importance to the Phillies making a deep playoff run this year, is those two guys being at, their top peak level in October.
Which is why it wouldn't surprise me to go to a 6-man. You give them an extra day off plus days off built in. They may get 2 extra days off at times. And I think at this point in both their careers, I think that would only help them. I was never, one of those guys, yeah, let's go to a 6-man rotation. But I think for this team, it would be a little beneficial because of what happened last year. We saw Nola later in the playoffs start tiring. And that's not what you want. You want those guys going into the playoffs with a good mindset and a fresh body. And I don't know, I'm not so sure you had that with either one of them last year going in the playoffs, but Nola pitched fairly well in the playoffs, so didn't Wheeler. So you can't really say, well, okay, that wasn't that bad. But, if you get an extra mile an hour, extra 2 miles an hour from one or two of those guys, it makes it even easier on them. And you bring up Wheeler, he looked about as dominant as I've ever seen in those first 3 innings the other day. And then that 4th inning, he kind of just lost everything. And that's a growing pain, because I will say this much. He made the adjustment in that game, and he continued on and ended up going deep into a game. But, he's just got to make that adjustment a little bit quicker, and he's probably out of that inning with maybe 1 run, if none. So I think Wheeler's getting better. Nola's, like you said, the ups and downs. I mean, he's a hard guy to figure out, because I'm watching him trying to figure out what's going well and what's not. And then once you start to think something's going in the right direction, it goes backwards on him. I don't know if that's mindset, because his arm looks fine. I know the first couple starts, his velocity was down a tick or two, but he's starting to get that back too. I think Aaron Nola is going to be fine, especially come June, July.
I can just tell you from a sports writer's perspective that when Nola is starting a game, even if it's like 3-0 and he's cruising and it's the 5th inning, I'm not typing a word yet, because I'm just waiting to see. I'm waiting to see what's going to happen.
It's cringeworthy. I mean, for a guy who has done so much for the organization, he still has question marks, and that to me is unreal. I mean, he's going into a big free agent year coming up, and there's still always those question marks about what inning is he going to blow up. It's like that movie Summer Catch with the kid trying to get into the minor leagues. He always has that one blow up inning, and I mean, if that ever ends, I mean, he'd be dominant.
Yeah, like the totality of the production. I mean, I always say that if a guy like this became a free agent, if he was on another team and he became a free agent and you're a Phillies fan and you're just looking at the numbers, you'd say, oh, absolutely, go sign this guy. Same thing with like Hector Neris, where when a guy is part of your organization for so many years, after a while, he gets kind of taken for granted. But there have been the ups and downs early with Nola. He has a 5.40 ERA through 5 starts this year, hasn't been striking out quite as many batters as usual. There will be no Nola or Wheeler in this Mariners series. It's Bailey Falter in game 1, Taijuan Walker in the middle game, and then Matt Strahm to wrap things up as the Phillies look to win their 7th game out of 9 and get back to the 500 mark. They're 11-12. They took care of business against the Rockies, did what they needed to do. And, they've quietly started clicking, whether it's the lineup 1 through 9 or it's the back end of the bullpen, as we talked about. And then you add on the Bryce Harper component, which could come in early May. What a boost that would provide, huh?
I mean, that to me is unbelievable, that he could literally be back first week of May. I mean, I don't think anybody expected this. I think the wheels started churning when they didn't put him on the 60-day injured list. But I mean, it seems as though I'm watching some of his batting practices. He's not holding back. So I don't want people to think he's in there kind of taking half swings. He's not. He's in there taking full swings, and there don't take this in any way, shape, or form. When he comes back, he's going right in that lineup, and it's not going to be a little I'm hitting for singles Bryce Harper. He's going to try to be hitting the ball out of the ballpark like he always does. And let's face it, that's just going to be a huge boost to the Phillies lineup when he gets in there.
And he might hit 150 for a couple of weeks. He's not going on a rehab assignment, and that is fine. It's just his presence in the lineup. And, he obviously there's still another step here. He needs to be cleared by the surgeon, Dr. Neil Elatrash, out in California. That's not a foregone conclusion, but he's put himself in the best possible position, and so have the Phillies, to get that clearance. And if they get it, he might be in the lineup right away, which would just be crazy considering.
Imagine that. Go see the doctor and you're in the lineup that day.
We'll see if it happens. Good. Thanks a lot for listening to this Phillies Talk podcast. He's Ricky. I'm Corey. We'll catch you later in the week.